Well, Australia's first hydrogen-powered prime mover is ready to hit the streets of Brisbane, ready to usher in a new era for green transport in the Sunshine State.
Introducing Pure Hydrogen, your go-to provider of Australian-designed, cutting-edge hydrogen fuel cell and battery electric commercial vehicles. Our advanced electric vehicles feature vehicle-to-grid technology, allowing you to return power to the grid during peak times and recharge when energy is cheaper, maximising efficiency and savings. Our flagship model, the Taurus Prime Mover, can be fitted with a 300 kilowatt 6x4 hydrogen fuel cell truck. This powerhouse has a 600 kilometre range, payload of up to 70 tonnes, and a refuelling time of only 15 minutes, all while delivering zero emissions. For councils and construction sectors, our hydrogen fuel garbage, concrete and rigid trucks operate with minimal noise and can handle between 20 to 30 tonnes, offering a quiet yet powerful solution. For passenger transport, we provide various battery electric and hydrogen fuel cell buses, including mini, city and coaches. Whether you need to move people in a city or rural setting, we have the solution tailored to the energy sources available to you. We offer flexible financing options for our partners, making it easier than ever to invest in clean energy transportation with monthly instalment plans available. Our team of experts are ready to design a customized zero-emission vehicle solution for your specific commercial needs. We provide ongoing maintenance and can even be your hydrogen fuel supplier. Get in touch with us today to discover how pure hydrogen can drive you into the future.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Alex Paul from InvestorStream, and I'll be your host today. Presenting for us this morning is Pure Hydrogen Corporation Limited Managing Director Scott Brown, who will be taking us through the company's developments on the including the fleet of zero-emission vehicles. Now, you can access the presentation by navigating to the ASX. A copy of the webinar will also be available on Pure Hydrogen's website and social media platforms later today. But for now, I'd like to throw it over to Scott to kick things off for us. Scott, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks very much, Alex, and thanks everyone for joining today. Look, we've had we think quite an interesting journey from, and you know, we've built what we think is a very capable product suite of solutions for zero emissions, both vehicles and other solutions for companies, and we think at the start of a commercialisation journey, and which we think can be very profitable for our company. So if you could go to the next slide. So essentially we've developed really three different business units. One is all around zero emission vehicles. So, and we're very much got very good technology now for both hydrogen fuel cell vehicles and battery electric. They run on the same platform, and we've got a pretty good suite of products we can offer people. We'll go through that in more detail. We also have made our first sale of hydrogen equipment. We've been working on that for some time. So that's into Vietnam. We think there's quite a lot of opportunities out there to put both of those together. So not only selling the vehicles, but also selling hydrogen equipment. And also we do have things like recharges if it's battery electric. And then finally, we're working on hydrogen production distribution. We are partnering with a number of different people, but things are coming along quite well for our site at Archerfield. Turquoise is certainly developing their product quite well. So we think that could be a very good business in the long term for us as well. So they're the three businesses or business units that we have. They all work together, and very much, you know, why you know, we have them in one company. We also do have some gas assets. I'll talk about that later. We do see that ultimately being in a different entity, but I'll talk about that a bit later. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So we think we've got a very compelling investment proposition now. We've got a very good product and technology base. So our products work, they're competitively priced, and there's a lot of different options, a lot of flexibility to provide, different solutions from very small operations in very diverse areas such as busing to transport of prime movers to garbage trucks, concrete mixers, etc. So we think we've got a really good product offering that we can offer customers. Without question, the orders are growing significantly. Certainly in the last 12 months, we've seen very large growth. We're talking to a lot of potential customers now. We think over the next 12 months, we'll see significant growth, and so that's really what we're sort of set up for. We are seeing a lot of growth internationally, so we have announced some dealerships that we've set up overseas. We think that's likely to expand. We've signed a deal, as I mentioned before, with Vietnam, and we think there's a lot of other markets we could get into as our products are sort of extremely good in terms of zero emissions and high quality. And so we think that certainly appeals to a lot of different countries around the world. We do have manufacturing capability. We're looking to expand that in Australia and perhaps other markets. And we're looking at, what funding we could get for that from government or other sources. And certainly that's part of the way we'll certainly grow. And we're working on a couple of different government programs. There's some pretty significant programs overseas that we're looking to tap into. Next slide, thanks. So for FY24, we've had a number of different sales pipelines that we're growing and developing and bringing to the fore, and that will only continue. As I mentioned, the international market is growing. We've now got 3 dealers in the US. We've just signed last week a dealership in Mexico. We're looking at the Middle East and also South America. So we think we're starting to put in place a lot of really good building blocks to get to strong orders and strong sales and ultimately profit. Next slide, thanks. So here's some of the customer pipeline. There's no doubt that this has been building for some time. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but we certainly expect record sales for the FY25 financial year as orders get delivered and converted into revenue. So very much the process is, we sign a sales agreement or term sheet with the customer. We build the particular product that they want, and then we deliver it. So we only build to order. And so very much what you'll see over the course of 25, hopefully a lot of these projects get delivered and convert into sales and revenue for the company, and ultimately, of course, cash flow. Next slide. So our vehicle side, we own 70% of H-Drive International. And that gives us, access to a lot of different vehicle types. There's a lot of investment being made into having a range of different vehicles, including the prime mover, the rigid trucks, and also the buses. So we've had an investment stage. We will be looking just to commercialise that over the coming certainly 12 months. Next slide, thanks. So some of the components we're using in the vehicles, we're trying to use very high quality, well-known brands. So Ballard, most people know that we use Ballard fuel cells. There are a number of other companies that are knocking on our door to want to entice us to use other brands, but we think Ballard is it's the number one brand for hydrogen fuel cells, and because of their capability, we think they're the best in the market at the moment. But certainly there's a lot more competition coming into the market, which means potentially pricing will reduce over time. Then some of the other brands you can see, Dana, USA and Eaton, is Dana for the motors, Eaton for the gearboxes. You've got a number of other brands, very much international. So the good thing is and brands like Hendrickson for the suspension. These are all brands that most fleet managers sort of know and love, and therefore, it's a relatively easy conversation to look at, what the after sales capability on these vehicles are, and certainly it's something that goes down well when you go through all the brand names that we use on our products. It's certainly a lot easier. Okay, next slide, thanks. So here's some of the hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. So starting from the top, that rigid truck, that's actually going to Solo. It's en route to go to them. Essentially, it's a 23-ton gross vehicle, 6x4 configuration. You can do it in because it's hydrogen fuel cell. The platform is all electronic and quite easy to reconfigure if we need to. But that vehicle's going to Solo, and there's a number of other vehicles in that space. There's strong interest, particularly from councils in Australia that want to go net zero. We've got the prime movers from 15 to 70 tonne. We have been approached recently by someone that wants to run 140 tonne vehicles in hydrogen for mining operations. So possibly next year we may have those if those conversations keep going. We have a coach and also a city bus, from 7 metres to 12 metres, and then the coach we can do a 12-metre bus that can go a reasonable amount of range. So they're in the hydrogen fuel cell range, and then on the next page we've got a battery electric range at the moment. Next page, thanks. So in particular, we're seeing a lot of interest in some of the electric buses, both the smaller units. We just sold two that are going into Mossman Gorge or Voyager. We do have also 2 buses at Sapphire as well, the 7-metre buses, but we're looking and quoting on bigger buses that do the 12-metre, the battery electric, and then we do have a rigid 15-tonne vehicle that is also available, and that's getting quite a lot of interest as well. Next page, thanks. So, one of the things we do want to set up is local assembly. We're actively talking to some state governments about setting up on the east coast of Australia. And one of the reasons we want to do that, and I guess there's two things. One is we can have an Australian product with an Australian VIN number, but it allows us to bid for particularly bus work where there is a local requirement. So that's certainly quite interesting. The other thing is we would simply do what's known as SKD, which is semi-knockdown assembly. So a lot of the parts or components would come in, we just screw them together, and we can assemble them very quickly and have a minimum amount of Australian labour, but still call it an Australian assembled vehicle. So that is important for both, marketing and also the export side. Next slide. Yeah. So, we're looking at entering probably the biggest market is the US market. There's also the European market. US has some extremely attractive subsidies, and these subsidies are at state level. So places like California, Pennsylvania, Illinois, essentially any state that's controlled by Democrats have extremely generous subsidies, which cover a lot of the vehicle and actually make hydrogen fuel cell or battery electric vehicles cheaper than the diesel equivalent. And that's why they're extremely attractive for us to enter. And, we could make good margins by selling our products into those markets. So that's why we've set up dealerships in the US and Mexico, and we'll continue to focus on trying to get sales out of that area. Next slide, thanks. So the first hydrogen hub we got in development at Archfield. We have procured some of the equipment that we're looking to bring into that site. We are waiting on some connections and approvals, but things are moving along quite nicely, and we hope to be operating that site sometime next year. And we already have quite a deal of demand or interest in our product up at Archerfield. So next slide. One of the things that we've started to do is selling hydrogen equipment. So we've done this in Vietnam. We think that can be quite a big business unit for us. There's a number of customers that are looking not only to have things like electrolyzers, but they're looking at storage, generators, and also refueling. A lot of these customers want to have all of that on site, some or all of it, and we're very happy to sell it to them and make a margin on it. And we think that is an easy business to get into and maintain, decent revenues and hopefully profit. Next slide, thanks. So the other investment we've made, we've got 40% of Turquoise Group. They're making some good strides with making graphene and hydrogen. They've got a demonstration plant up at Darra in Brisbane, and they're having some good results. So we do see that as adding to our overall position, whereby we could get cheap hydrogen, and certainly graphene is a product that is in quite high demand. So we do see that as something that will add value to our company overall. Next slide. So the team we've got involved Obviously, myself, I've been involved in public companies for the last 30 years. And a number of different companies there. We've got Adam Giles and Lan Nguyen and Ron Prefontaine as company directors. We're building up a very good management team with Les Nelson, Clint Butler, Ben Kittle, and Dresh, all contributing and sort of certainly growing the company quite substantially. So overall, we're disappointed with where the share price is. Market cap of 43 million at the moment, and shares on issue of 373 million. Next slide. So we do have these assets gas assets we've put quite a lot of investment in, and we've pivoted away from the gas industry in terms of moving into hydrogen. We are looking at ways we can maximise value here, and we'll probably have more to say about that in coming days. But we do think these are extremely attractive assets in a market that is the market price for gas is certainly quite high on the East Coast, and so there is an appetite out there for these assets if they're managed correctly, and we see it as a value add proposition. That's all I was going to say. Do we have time now for some questions?
Absolutely, Scott. We've been inundated with some questions. Firstly, thank you to all who have submitted questions already. To start, Scott, you opened the presentation by sort of saying it has been quite a transformative sort of 12 months for the company. Where do you see the growth in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, thanks, Alex, for the question. There's a few areas. Firstly, we see buses as huge potential. They not only in Australia but internationally, but if you just come to the Australian market, there is a market leader here called Volgren that very much is a number one company in the space, but there really isn't a number two. There's Daylight being the number two. And so we think we can be a major player in the bus market in Australia. All of or most of the states have all enacted or told operators they need to move to net zero. So effectively, the bus fleet's going to be turned over the next 10 years or so. There's huge amount of orders that could be gained in that area, and we only need a small percentage. We've got a really attractive suite of products, and they're attractively priced. So I see that as one area. The other one would be the equipment market I sort of mentioned. We've got large potential both in Australia and around the world. Our first sale was Vietnam, but we see other markets opening up. Certainly there's a lot of inquiry. And finally, the US market, particularly the truck side of things, there's strong interest. Definitely from the US because there's very big subsidies. So we would see that in the second half of next calendar year, some of those sales will start coming through. So that's where I see it in the short term.
Thanks, Scott. So look, I note that investment firm Bridge Street Capital recently initiated research on PH2, which included a valuation of 39 cents per share. Now, this research forecasts that sales for FY25 would be around $19 million and a gross profit of $3.1 million. Do you believe the company can achieve this forecast for FY25?
So if we have not made any official company forecast. There's some rules around that, but Bridge Street have made a forecast. Look, we don't see that as being unreasonable. We've already announced quite a lot of sales. It's a question of when those orders convert to sales. So we see the number of 19 million for FY25 as reasonable, and the gross profit of 3.1 being reasonable as well.
Now, across your diversified product offering, Pure Hydrogen has found strong recent momentum with its fleet of zero-emission buses, as you mentioned in the presentation. Can you just talk through more broadly how this market is developing as part of Pure's broader growth strategy?
Yeah, there is no doubt. There's a number of different markets within the bus operations. So things like, people like tourist operators, clubs, those sort of venues. And also we do have, the passenger vehicles for, city buses or coaches. So there's a range of different markets there. We're getting on lots of panels now around Australia. And I think in due course we'll see, quite a lot of growth in orders and sales. So we've got a really good product offering. It's competitively priced and it's high quality. So I think we're well placed in that market for sure.
Thanks, Scott. Now, can you just advise us on how the trial of the Taurus Prime Mover with Pepsi went?
So we did in over a month of running 5 trips a day between Lytton and Tinkalpa. And it was a pretty good experience. We certainly learned a lot out of it. You were refilling the vehicles and certainly doing a normal load. The issue for us right at the moment is there's not any 700 bar refueling, certainly in Queensland and not on the East Coast at the moment. We will have 700 bar refueling in early next year. And we will be able to then fill the truck. It'll be able to do, instead of 1 shift, probably 3 shifts, and it'll make a big difference. And so we're looking to redo that for not only that customer, Pepsi, but a lot of other customers are interested in having the vehicles filled right up so they can run a full range with during a 24-hour cycle. So it was a pretty good learning experience for us, and certainly shows that hydrogen vehicles can work without any issue. Alex, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, Scott. So look, along with its domestic sales outlook, the company is finding strong traction in North America with a distribution agreement already in the US and a further agreement signed in Mexico last week. Can you just talk about what's behind the momentum in that market?
The real thing, as I mentioned, is subsidies. So the subsidies are extremely generous. So California, Pennsylvania, and some of the other states have got very large subsidies. So it's at a state level. It's not at a federal level. They also have, certainly in California, there's legislation that says you've got to remove diesel vehicles by a certain time. So they're looking to try and phase out diesel over the next 10 years, or diesel trucks, that is. So that creates a big momentum. Just in Long Beach, California, they've got 40,000 truck movements every day. So you can imagine there's a huge amount of trucks, and just the market size of the US versus Australia. Even though we're a big country, the US is got probably 15 times more volume in terms of the number of vehicles. So it's a huge market opportunity. That's why we've sought out dealers in the US. We've spent a lot of time there, and I'm actually going there the coming week to the US to meet with some of those dealers and certainly trying to get orders for the company.
Thanks, Scott. So, broadly speaking, how does pure hydrogen differentiate itself from other zero-emission vehicle and hydrogen producers?
Look, I think there's a couple of things. One, we've got a pretty broad product range. Two, we've got products that work really well, and we're very much looking at high quality products. So, our products that we're using, as I showed on that slide earlier, high quality components, the best we can get. And so that serves us extremely well. The other thing is we build from ground upwards. Unlike some other companies that are looking to do retrofit, we don't think that's ultimately the long-term way to do it. We think it's much better to build a vehicle from ground up. So one, you can design it to fit the electric components into the vehicle. And two, it just optimizes the design. So we can control it all. We're not reliant on a third party. The other thing to say is we're very much, and this is why when we designed our platform, we can plug in hydrogen, but we can all easily have a battery as well. And that's what we're looking to do. So most of our vehicles are going to be available both in hydrogen fuel cell and battery electric. So depending on what the customer wants and what their requirements are, we can cater for both very easily, because all the components up to a fuel cell or battery are exactly the same, which is a great way to design it, but it also gives us a lot of flexibility in providing a good product to a customer.
Thanks, Scott. So more specifically, obviously Nikola is, I guess, the benchmark for every company to measure itself against. How does your company compare to Nikola in that regard?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say Nikola is the benchmark. Yes, they've got quite a few sales at the moment, but certainly we see our products, certainly our prime mover, as better than what they've got. You might say we would say that, but one, we've got a hydrogen vehicle. We've also got a battery electric for prime mover. They really only have one product set. They don't have buses. They don't have rigids. They just have prime mover. But the prime mover they have is at a lower spec than the prime mover that we have. We can do up to 70 tonne. They're about 42 tonne is what their design capacity. So, we can obviously carry more weight, etc. So that if it is very much looking at carrying a big load, we've got better capacity there than Nikola. The other thing is we will certainly be looking at bringing in rigid trucks. So the garbage truck, we think, will have a lot of utility in the US. So we're just waiting for approvals. Once that gets approved, then we can market that in a major way. There's a lot of operators of garbage trucks in the US. We think that's going to be a big market to really target.
Thanks, Scott. And just sort of off the back of that, obviously the US election last week has been run and won by Donald Trump. Does Trump's election victory have any effect on the company or the markets in the US that it's trying to target?
Look, as I mentioned, the subsidies are mainly given by states, not at the federal level. It will have some effect, but I don't think it'll have a major effect on our operations and what we're trying to achieve. I think some of these policies are certainly pro-business, and things like cutting down regulation and lower taxes in the US is obviously going to be positive for growth. And on the back of that, US companies will have more money, and part of it will be looking at investing in vehicles or hydrogen equipment and so on. So I actually see net probably a positive rather than a negative.
Thanks, Scott. And just finally, you mentioned just earlier, but I understand you're hitting the road this month to meet investors and potential stakeholders in London and New York. Finally, can you just talk us through what you're hoping to achieve from this visit?
Yeah, it's to catch up with a number of investors that I met earlier in the year and have expressed interest in the company and investing either at the headco or at a project level. We certainly are talking to some investors in the US that particularly like our story and want to see us progress in the US market. So, we'll see how that goes. Some pretty high quality meetings lined up, and hopefully that'll be a pretty good trip for me and the company.
Thanks, Scott. Well, look, that's all the time we have today. Thank you all for joining me. And I'd also like to thank Scott for presenting and taking the time to answer some questions. As I mentioned before, a recording of the webinar will be on Pure Hydrogen's website and social media platforms later today. Scott, before I let you go, did you have any final comments to leave with us today?
Look, we're pretty happy with the way the company's tracking. The only thing we're not happy about is the share price, but we think in due course that will correct itself. But yeah, we're pretty happy with the interaction we're getting with potential customers. We think we can turn this company into a very significant and substantial company. We're motivated to do that. We're putting in certainly a lot of effort, and in due course, hopefully that will reflect in orders and sales, and hopefully then profit. So thanks, Alex, for the questions and the time today. And thank you, everyone that's listening to this webinar.
Well, that wraps it up for us here. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Cheers.